Hey, welcome back to the Daily Dose, where we're talking about healthy finances. I'm with Eric Waite. He's our CFO here at North Coast. Yesterday, we talked about the mindset of money. And just to give you a quick heads up, these are just short little nuggets. We can't fix your finances in 3 to 5 minutes. So this is just to help get us in the right direction. We're actually going to be filming a longer version of tips and tricks for finances here coming up, and we'll make sure to let you know about that. And we have a keyword for you at the end of this daily dose, so please listen to the entire thing to be able to help you in the process of budgeting. So here we go. We're talking about budgeting, and you're like, I don't even want to hear that word because it makes me just cringe. I hear you. Who really likes a budget? But our CFO guy says it's important. So Eric, tell us, why should we care about this?
Well, I think it's interesting that you talk about what that does to us when we hear the word budget. It just reminds me of some other crazy words in the English language that conjure up a whole bunch of emotions. And one of those that I think budget does a lot of times is the word diet. It sometimes feels so restrictive, and we're finding ourselves in a place of just, depressed and not feeling good, and we've lacked choice. And there's things that we can't do. It's like, honey, we can't do that. We're on a budget. But I can tell you that just like dieting, where people have success on the other side of that, the same thing can truly happen with your budget, where you start to have expressions around freedom and choice, because you've established a place where you've set some goals, you've set some priorities, you've put yourself in a place for success where you know what you're doing and where you're going. You have a map.
I like the idea of freedom in spending.
Yeah.
That feels good. All right, so you gave us a passage here. This is Luke 18. Or Luke 14, starting verse 28. Suppose one of you wants to build a tower. Won't you first sit down and estimate the cost to see if you have enough money to complete it? For if you lay the foundation and are not able to finish it, everyone who sees it will ridicule you, saying, the person began to build and wasn't able to finish. Oh man. Yeah, there's those houses in the neighborhood that are still under renovation.
Right. Yeah, and it's just a place. I love how Luke talks about there in the passage of instructing us where not being able to finish is ridiculed. And I think that we would not want to live in a place like that. We would not want to have our finances in a place where we're ridiculed because we didn't have a plan to finish what we started. And all too often I see people forget that they don't know where they're going with their finances, and they have conversations about, wow, why is there's too much month left in my money? Or I feel like money falls through my fingertips every month. And that just shouldn't be the case. If you have a system in place, if you're knowing where things are going, Solomon talks about in Proverbs that it's know the condition of your flock. So we're being taught through Scripture to tell us that we have a process of where our money's going.
All right, so we should have a process of knowing it. And so how do we even go about doing this, starting this?
Yeah, the first step I say is to keep good records. We can talk about a budget in a place of outlining things. I like to ask people, I go, what's easier, strategy or execution? And most people would get to the place and say, well, strategy is pretty easy. We can sit in a room and talk about the best laid plans and have a plan. But really executing on the strategy is the trick, is the really disciplined part that has to come in.
I think the records part is interesting because a lot of times we'll create a kind of a fantasy budget.
Yeah.
Where it's where we want to see our money going, but then it's the reality of matching the records to our maybe desire.
Correct, yeah. And in business, we do this all the time where we look at what we planned and then what we actually did on the other side of that. And we need to do that in our personal lives as well. We need to have some record of accountability that I've laid out a plan, but am I following the budget that I've done? And so I encourage people all the time, one of the first steps that you can do in creating good records is for the next 30 days, just literally write down everything you spend money on so that you have to have a scorecard to tell you where your money's going.
Okay, do I need to really write it down? I mean, there's a lot of people, I can just download it. Is that good enough?
It really is. I mean, go into QuickBooks and just, if you have access to that, open it up and give yourself $1 million and just say, I have $1 million balance in here, but I'm going to record everything I spend so that I actually can see a compelling scorecard as to how I'm doing.
I like starting with the $1 million balance. That sounds good.
Yep.
I think the key, though, is really to consolidate everything. If you're married, both of what you're spending. If you have different credit cards, put it all onto the one sheet, not just the one debit card, right? And you really give yourself an honest look at it.
Yeah, very much so. For the married couples out there, I tell everybody budgeting is a team sport. You need to both be involved and you need to both participate in where your money's going.
Okay, I got to ask this before we finish out. If you say it's a team sport though, Eric, like it can be hard to bring up talking about finances with somebody else and getting wisdom and counsel or even with the spouse. How do you bring this up in a healthy way that doesn't cause tension?
Yeah, I think that there's a place that you just have to do it, and it's okay to seek wise counsel. Scripture tells us, the counsel of many advisors is successful, and so I think that that's quite all right. And if you find yourself in a place where it's uncomfortable, certainly feel free to bring in a professional on the outside and find counsel to help you have those conversations.
Especially areas that maybe you just need to determine we don't see eye to eye on this one. And that's okay. It doesn't mean one person's in the wrong, but maybe you bring in somebody else to be able to help mitigate those moments. Okay, so budgeting, where do we go to get a good budget?
We can provide one for you. I think that there's some great resources out there that can do for you, and we'd be happy to help you with a budget.
So all you need to do is text the word budget to the phone number that you received the daily dose from, or this phone number right here on the screen if you happen to be just watching on YouTube. Just the keyword budget, that's it, onto this phone number. And we're gonna send you a link to a budget that Eric has created. It's a whole chart. It's gonna be able to calculate things for you. So there's a great resource for you. And then lastly, just to kind of close this out, I think, in my understanding of what you just talked about, I feel like operating without a budget is kind of like running a boat out in the middle of the water without a fuel gauge. We don't really have an idea of where we're going, how long we're gonna go, and are we ready for that emergency? So I encourage you, let's dive into this. Let's talk about it. If you're married, talk about it with somebody else. If you just don't know a good starting point, then talk to somebody where it looks like they have a good idea of finances. Get some wise counsel. There's no reason to do this on your own. Thanks everybody, and we'll see you tomorrow. Enjoying some of these tips on money? Well, we want to give you an in-depth look at this through an online video class that we're going to be doing. I'm going to interview Eric with some more principles of how we run North Coast Church, as well as his personal family. So encourage you to join us. Simply text the keyword money to this phone number right here on your screen, and we'll be sending you a link for you to be able to register to this online on-demand class. So hopefully you'll be joining us. Text the keyword money to this phone number right here on your screen. There's no cost to it. We simply want to be able to give you additional resources.